goal setting can bring up those feelings of grief and frustration. If you're setting goals that are achievable and you then go on to achieve those goals, that can really bring a sense of positivity and joy and happiness. So my number one tip is to let's talk about it. Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About. Today I'm going to be talking about goal setting, and this is a bit of a different episode. For starters, I don't have a guest with me today. This is just a solo episode, and also it's a bit of a different topic, and I was actually just going to do this as its own kind of standalone video, but actually I decided that goal setting is something that should be in Let's Talk About, because it is a topic in an area of life that I do feel is different for people who have chronic illnesses and disabilities than it is for healthy people, in a way that actually a lot of people don't necessarily realise. So yeah. Also, just for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Becca, I'm 24 and I have a chronic illness called ME, which stands for myalgic encephalomyelitis, and I am an ambulatory wheelchair user. So everything that I'm going to be talking about and sharing in this video is from my personal experience. It's my opinion based on my experience, and obviously that's going to be different for every single person. And also obviously I'm talking from the perspective of having a chronic illness and a disability, and it will probably vary depending on what kind of chronic illness you have, what disability you have, or if you don't have a chronic illness or a disability. So you may not necessarily relate to everything that I say, you may not necessarily agree with everything that I say, and that's okay. So the reason that I say that goal setting can be challenging when you have a chronic illness, because I certainly find that there's already a lot of grief attached to that, grief for the things that you could do before you were ill, and also grieve for the things that you should be doing now if you weren't ill. And I've also personally experienced a lot of feelings of frustration towards my body, kind of not being able to do the things that I want it to be able to do. And I do feel like goal setting, if kind of done incorrectly, can really just bring up those feelings of grief and frustration, and can be almost a bit of like a breeding ground for those feelings, especially if you're setting goals that are unrealistic, too far out of your kind of physical abilities, and then not achieving those can really just really bring up those feelings of grief and frustration, and almost act as a reminder of the things that you can't do rather than the things that you can do. So yeah, and also when you have a chronic illness, there's so much of what happens in your own life that is just so completely out of your control. Like for me, like there's just so much to do with kind of physical things that is just so completely out of my control because of my health. So maybe compared to a healthy person setting goals, I'm not able to have as much control over how I achieve certain goals. I obviously can't push myself as much as a healthy person would be able to in order to achieve goals, if that makes sense. So from that point of view, I do feel like goal setting can be a really, really challenging thing, and it's also can be very easy to make comparisons to other people and what goals other people are setting, and wondering whether goals that you're setting are too small or too big, or seeing other people achieving their goals and wondering why you're not. I feel like, again, comparison is a really big part of a really big challenge that comes with having chronic illness, is comparing yourself to people who are healthy, comparing yourself to the person that you were before you were ill. And again, this can really bring up those feelings, especially this time of year. Obviously it's January, Happy New Year. it's the time of year where it's kind of most socially acceptable to be setting goals. There's a lot of pressure to be setting goals, whether you're ill, whether you're healthy, whatever. It's the time of year, New Year's resolutions, set goals, plan your year, all this sort of thing. When everybody's setting goals, it can be really difficult to know what goals are good to set, what goals aren't. Everyone's kind of sharing their goals, and it can be difficult. So yeah, so those are kind of some of the ways that I feel like goal setting can be a real challenge when you are chronically ill or disabled. But I truly, truly believe, and this is from my own personal experience, that if done well and in a way that works for you, setting goals can be a really, really positive thing. If you're setting goals that are achievable and you then go on to achieve those goals, that can really bring a sense of positivity and joy and happiness and yeah, just achievement into life. And I do feel like life with chronic illness can at times be a real challenge. There can be a lot of negativity, a lot of darkness, a lot of pain, a lot of heartache. And I do feel like it's nice to find ways to inject little bits of happiness and joy and excitement into that and into life. And I truly believe that goal setting, when done well, can be a really, really good way to do that. And having goals that you're working towards, no matter how small they may be, no matter how small they may feel, working towards those goals can give you a real sense of kind of purpose and of living, when sometimes those feelings aren't all that prominent. So those are basically my kind of thoughts and feelings on goal setting as a whole when you have chronic illnesses, disabilities, mental health conditions, anything like that. So I'm now going to share some of my tips and advice on setting goals. So my number one tip is to set goals that are realistic for you. And I really emphasise the for you part of that, because it can be easy to be like, well, this goal is a realistic one for most people, but actually maybe it's not realistic for you. Like some people might consider wanting to travel to 2 new places. For most people that might be like, oh yeah, that's realistic. So you might sit and be like, oh, I'd really love to travel to 2 new places. That's a realistic goal. But actually, if it's not realistic for you and what your lifestyle, your health, your physical capabilities are, if it's not realistic within that for you personally, then it's probably not a realistic goal. And I do feel like it's so easy when you kind of sit down and think about wanting to set yourself goals. It's so easy to let your mind kind of run away with itself and let your imagination run wild and just start coming up with all the things that you've ever wanted to do in the whole of your life and start putting them down as goals. And actually a lot of the time those goals aren't really realistic. They might kind of be things that would go more on like a bucket list than a goal list. I feel like there's kind of a difference between those two things, and it can be really easy to very quickly fall into setting yourself up for failure if you're setting goals that are actually unrealistic and too far out of what you're kind of able to do. So I think, yeah, setting goals that are realistic for you, kind of sitting down. This can be really difficult, having like a really honest conversation with yourself about what your personal physical capabilities are, what your body is able to do, and setting goals that kind of sit within that. Obviously goals, like, they want to kind of push you a little bit, but you don't want to be setting goals that are unrealistic and are going to push you too far. And I think within that, like I've already said, don't worry about what goals other people are setting. Every single person is different. Every single person is on their own personal journey, and it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. These are your goals for you. You don't even have to share them with anybody else. They can just be your goals between you and you. Like, don't worry about whether your goals are too small. Like I said, a lot of the goals that I would maybe consider to be bigger goals would be considered to be very small, mundane things for kind of healthy people. If they feel achievable for you, then that's all that matters. Setting smaller achievable goals is going to be far better for you mentally, emotionally, physically, than setting goals that are actually, like I said, kind of just too far out and setting yourself up for failure. So yeah, that's all kind of comes under my first tip. My next piece of advice would be to be specific, so that it's really clear what your goal is and really clear to see when you've achieved it. If you've kind of watched my videos in the past, quite a few times I've done a video at the beginning of the year kind of talking about some of my goals for the year ahead, and in quite a lot of those videos I've set a goal of wanting to be more confident, and that's great, that's a great goal to have, but actually writing that down at the start of the year, this year I want to be more confident, almost every single time I set that goal I then got to the end of the year and been like, I don't know, have I achieved that? It's hard, that's a difficult kind of thing to measure. So I think, yeah, being specific with your goals. So for example, let's say this year you want to focus on the positives. That's quite a vague, kind of ambiguous goal that then at the end of the year you could be like, well, I did try, but I was also negative at times, and it's hard to know whether you have achieved that goal. So just as an example, if that is something that you want to work on, is being more positive, then maybe a good goal to set would be to have a specific number of things you want to write down that you're grateful for. And kind of within that, I would say to kind of average things out. So rather than saying that you want to write down one thing that you're grateful for every single week, I would recommend, using that example, kind of setting the goal of, over the course of the year I want to write down 50 things that I'm grateful for. So that works out at just less than one a week, but it means that if for whatever reason you miss a week, you forget, you can't think of anything one week, you can still achieve that goal. Whereas if you say, I want to write down one thing I'm grateful for every week, and then you miss a week, then it can be very easy to then think, well, there's no point in me carrying on with this goal because I know that I haven't achieved it. So yeah, be specific with what your goal is, so it is clear that when you have achieved it, but don't set a goal that requires you to do something on a regimented basis that may slip up because life, and then that goal is no longer achievable. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. My next tip is, again, from my own personal experience. This may be different for you, and that's absolutely fine, but for me, my piece of advice would be to be really careful around setting goals relating to your health, relating to kind of physical things. If you do have a chronic illness or a disability, I do feel like this is an area particularly where it can be very easy to end up in those feelings of grief and frustration, and also can kind of lead to you pushing yourself too far and actually going backwards. And this is from my own personal experience. For quite a few years I set goals around wanting to be able to walk a certain distance and increase my walking distance to a certain point, and actually I found that I wasn't able to achieve that goal, and I was pushing myself too far beyond my baseline, and that can very quickly and very easily have a very adverse effect and lead to a big crash that then puts me below where I started, which is really not where I want to be, not what I want to be doing. I mean, if you find setting goals around your ME helpful and it works for you and you do well with that, then by all means do that. I'm just saying, for me personally, I like to be really careful around that, not to kind of set anything that is going to push me too far, and also nothing that is going to set me up to experience those feelings of grief and frustration when I have set those goals around increasing my walking distance and I haven't achieved that. It's made me feel very frustrated towards my body, kind of leaving me wondering, like, why can't I walk this far? I used to be able to walk this far. Why can't I walk this far now? What am I doing wrong? Like, it can become very quickly kind of quite messy. mentally, I think, when you kind of set those kind of goals. So yeah, I would just say just to be careful. So, and also I spoke a little bit about kind of when you have ME, a lot of things being out of your control, and kind of physical things relating to your health, things relating to your ME is an area where I feel that I have little to no control. So setting goals around that can be really difficult because there's not actually a whole lot that I'm physically able to do to achieve that. That leads me very nicely onto my next piece of advice, which is to set goals around the things that you can control and focus on the things that you can control or that you have more control over. So for example, I like to set a lot of goals around kind of self-care, skincare, hair care, that kind of thing. As an example, I journal a lot. I have a journal that I kind of write in more or less every day, and at the start of each month I create a self-care bingo. So I write down various kind of self-care things that I want to do throughout the month and then tick them off as I go. And one of my goals this year is to complete 10 self-care bingos. So obviously I'll have 12 in total, but on 10 of the 12 months of the year I would like to do all the self-care things that I set, and they are kind of small-ish things like washing my face, doing a face mask, colouring, listening to music, gratitude, that kind of thing. So I think kind of setting goals around things that are going to positively impact your life, kind of mentally, emotionally, is really good, and kind of focusing on those things that you have a bit more control over. I already kind of gave the example with gratitude of writing down 50 things throughout the year that you're grateful for. I think the next thing is not to put too much pressure on yourself and to be kind to yourself throughout the process. I think it can be easy to quickly feel a lot of pressure to be working hard to achieve the goals, and if you're not achieving them fast enough and all that kind of thing. I think just being kind to yourself throughout the process and not putting too much pressure on yourself. And remember that there are no rules when it comes to goal setting. Every single person will do it slightly differently, and you should do it in a way that works for you. Like, set your goals on whatever time frame works for you. It doesn't just have to be a year, it could be longer than that. I do feel like having a time frame in mind is a good idea because it can help kind of keep the focus and help you kind of see more clearly when you have achieved it. But yeah, having whatever timeline works for you. And also, like, it's okay to go back and kind of edit and adjust your goals or adjust the time frame if it isn't really going quite as maybe you hoped that it would. I think, just as an example, if you are setting goals in January that you want to achieve throughout the year, then maybe in kind of June time, about halfway through the year, sit down and have a look at your goals, see which ones you've achieved, see which ones you're close to, and if there are any that you're kind of thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to achieve that now, it's too far, it's too much, then maybe just adjust it a bit, make it a bit smaller, increase the time frame on that goal, do what you want to do in order to keep it an achievable and a reasonable goal. And yeah, just ultimately be kind to yourself and know that, like, the goals don't have an expiry date. Like, if you kind of reach your deadline and you haven't quite achieved your goal, then keep going with it. If it still feels good and you're enjoying the process, then keep going with that goal. Your goal doesn't expire on the 31st of December. You don't have to reset with a new goal on the 1st of January. You can kind of keep going with your goals for as long as you want to and you need to, as long as it feels kind of good for you. So yeah, I think those are my top tips. So just to review, because I was obviously chatting a lot during that. Number 1 is to set goals that are realistic for you and focusing on what works for you. Number 2 is to be specific so that it's really clear when you have achieved your goal, and also kind of average things out so that it's not something that you have to be doing every week, for example. Number 3 is to be careful around setting any goals relating to your health and your chronic illness. Number 4, leading on from that, is to focus your goals on things that you maybe do have more control over, things like self-care and gratitude and mental and emotional well-being. Number 5 is to not put too much pressure on yourself, and remember that there are no rules, you just do what you need to do. So that has worked out as 5. I didn't really plan for it to be 5, but yeah, those are my 5 top tips for goal setting. So yeah, that's it really. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit of a different episode of Let's Talk About, but I hope that it's been useful and insightful nonetheless. If you have any tips yourself that you'd like to share, then do let me know down in the comments. And also, if you'd like to share any of your goals that you have set for this year, I know I've shared a couple of mine throughout this video, then again, if you want to, you can put them in the comments. And yeah, please do give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let me know down in the comments what other episodes of Let's Talk About you would like to see in 2026, and I will see you all again very soon with another video. Bye!